All right, Andy, let's talk about Daniel Jones. Now, listen, no one is shocked by the idea that Daniel Jones is not the greatest quarterback in the world, that he hasn't excelled to top five, status with stats and other analytics over the course of these first four games. However, the one thing that we obviously knew coming out of this Dallas game, at least in my eyes, was that whether it's injury or whether there's something in him that is risk adverse, which you wouldn't think he would be, given that he's already gotten the contract, it's very evident that Daniel Jones' deep ball play is not there. I can't tell you 100% what the reasons are, but every time that he went deep in that Dallas game, 3 or 4 passes that could have been critical moments for this offense, you saw players that were slowing down to try to make the catch. Even the big play for Malik Neighbors, he had to stop, essentially, catch that ball, and then pick up some extra yards. When you hit players in rhythm, when you find guys in stride, when you lead your wide receivers, that's when really explosive plays downfield happen. It was not eye-opening because, again, we weren't thinking some astronomical goal for Daniel Jones, but it was a new wrinkle in the things that Daniel Jones maybe struggles with. Now we may have to take off the table that they can be explosive and look downfield with him under center.
Yeah, it would be one thing if Daniel Jones just misses like a slant pass over the middle, throws it behind someone, and you're like, oh, chalk it up to just bad timing or didn't see the window. It feels like this is consistently happening where the Giants are scheming up great plays. Players are getting open down the field vertically, and those are the misses that Daniel Jones ends up happening. Yep. I feel fine with him looking over the middle of the Wan'Dale Robinson. That's the reason why Wan'Dale Robinson, I think, has 26 catches, is 5th in the league right now in receptions, Adam. Yeah. Like, he has found a way to make those plays happen. Malik Neighbors obviously is top 3 or 4 in the league in yards and obviously catches and all that, because he's just a freak of nature, and I think any ball that's thrown in his general vicinity, he can go up and get, right? Mm-hmm. It's all of the other plays that Darius Slayton, the timing over the top, the open opportunities for big plays that Daniel Jones is missing. And Adam, the biggest challenge that I have is sometimes we use stats to be able to say why Daniel Jones hasn't been able to do things. The challenge that I have right now is all the stats are telling you that Daniel Jones is playing fine. He's playing average. Sometimes it's even saying that certain statistical categories, he's a top 10 to 12 quarterback in the league. If you look at his QBR right now is 14th in the league. I think that's pretty noteworthy just to say that's top half of the league right now.
Of course.
Gridiron Media put out his overall rankings of QBR being 14th in the league. His EPA, his expected points added, is 9th in the league. His passing EPA, which is his expected points passing through the air, is 4th right now. And it's like, you cannot tell me that Daniel Jones passing through the air is adding more points to his team's total than 28 other starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And that's the hardest part as a guy that has always been more positive on Daniel Jones than everyone else. I sat in the stadium on Thursday night watching that game being like, the Giants aren't going to score a touchdown. The Giants can't get in the end zone. And like, can you get me one? Can you put one on the board? And I mean, I talked about it on Friday, just some of the coaching decisions on when to go for it on 4th down didn't help the Giants. But I walked away with the same feeling that a lot of other people did, which was Malik Neighbors is awesome. The run game had some challenges, but ultimately Daniel Jones could not hit the key moments where we needed that one big play. And guess what? It happened for Dallas where CeeDee Lamb catches the ball, makes one big play. They score 7, and it feels like that's the end of the game. I don't. So you mentioned Colin Cowherd talking about it. Do you want to talk a little bit about like what he said and where you feel like, sometimes maybe he's right, sometimes he's wrong, but what did he say about Daniel Jones specifically?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when by the way, we talk about the Giants and we have our opinions, and fans come in and they watch us on YouTube, listen on the podcast, and they say, you guys are out of your minds. What are you talking about? And I know that Colin Cowherd or any large national media personality can sometimes be someone who comes in from 1,000 feet up and drops his opinion on a team and then swoops out. But I think that he accurately came away from that week 4 game and that loss for the Giants and said, if you're the Giants, it doesn't have to feel that bleak. You have your elite franchise left tackle in place. You have your elite number 1 wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. You have defensive weapons and anchors in Dexter Lawrence, now in Brian Burns, even in Kayvon Thibodeau, right? Like, you look across this team and you feel like a lot of the key components are there. Your offensive line is playing solid overall. So you're just a quarterback away. And it's the reality of when we talk about all those stats, in basketball, it's, ball don't lie. I think, stats can tell you a story, but your eye test and what you see in the game, that tells you really what's happening here. And, we've talked before about Brian Dable and his ability to coach up guys. I think you're seeing how you're having difficulty navigating that. And in regards to Colin Cowherd, I want to say that he's right. I want to tell Giants fans to believe in that. And by the way, I don't want to be pessimistic throughout this. It's just where we're at, man. They're 1-3, and we're talking about the issues that they're struggling with. I think you can envision being the Washington Commanders, who got Jaden Daniels, and all of the sudden, the defense is still atrocious, but the offense is explosive. It's dynamic, and I think that that's probably the correlation that someone like Cowherd is making, and maybe Giants fans and we should make as well. Put in a little bit of an athlete, put in a different quarterback here, and we'd be having a different discussion. And I want to go through some stats, Andy, before we even get into other veteran quarterbacks around the league right now that have been making some noise that is more damning for Daniel Jones.
Yeah, we'll talk about them in a second. I have just a very philosophical thing that I've been thinking about. I've been trying to marinate it and let it sit, and I want to know how this lands with you.
He's like a stew.
It feels like Daniel Jones can be part of the reason why Giants win football games. Like you saw against the Commanders, he played good, borderline well, in terms of being 9th overall in QBR. Against the Browns, I thought he was aggressive. I thought he played good again. Well, he was top 10 in quarterback rating. So I think he plays well enough to help the team win. But when he plays bad, he is the number one reason why they continually lose football games. And so when you look at other explosive players, like other explosive quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson is the reason why the Ravens win football games. He's not one of the reasons why they win. He is the reason why they win. And also, it happens very frequently that he is the guy and the reason why they win. And maybe he'll have an off game now and then, but he is consistently the reason why they win. So to me, it's like Jones can help complement a football team to a win, but he is the reason why they lose more often than he should be for a guy that you see the stats are saying is top half in the league in terms of being a quarterback.
No, 100%. And by the way, you mentioned the Wan'Dale Robinson stats. Like he does have 26 receptions. You're correct on 38 targets. Now, he had some drops earlier in the season that have made that catch percentage look a little bit lower. It's 194 yards though. He's averaging 7.5 yards per reception. He has 100 yards after the catch. So to your point, more than half of his yardage is coming after the fact. If you extrapolated it out, guess what? He'd be 100 reception receiver this year. Now, he would only have 800 yards, a little bit less than 800 yards on the year. Now, that would still be like yardage would be good. That would probably look good. Maybe gets a few touchdowns. That would probably look good. The receptions would look good by themselves, right? When you cobble it all together, I think this then ties back to Daniel Jones. And are you able to run the offense effectively and hit those moments when those big opportunities come? Obviously, before we even extend it down the list to where Darius Slayton is right now, who through 4 games just has 10 receptions on 15 targets, 122 yards, but 12.2 there. The explosive plays down the field have been tricky. We know Malik Neighbors has been electric, has been elite, and that's come on 52 targets. So he's going to have about 6,000 before the year is said and done. The other more critical part for me, Andy, I talked about Jaden Daniels, young quarterbacks. Yes, that's the future. That's building. But we're also now seeing that in a place like Carolina, where Bryce Young gets benched and they bring in the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton, to take over, guess what? Serviceable quarterback makes their offense look competent. You go over, Anthony Richardson gets injured because of organizational incompetence around his hip. Guess what? Joe Flacco, the hero of the Cleveland Browns from a year ago, he steps in, throws multiple touchdowns. That is the most damning element of this. And it's not like we're not here debating about the state of Daniel Jones' career, etc. However, when veterans walk in the door and can be serviceable, competent quarterbacks that, to your point, are contributing to an opportunity to win football games, Daniel Jones is a 6-year quarterback. He's not walking into any team around the league and giving you serviceable, contributing to victory type of play. Right now, you'd say he needs to take a Sam Darnold year, right? Go somewhere, sit, think about life, marinate on it a little bit, and maybe come out the other side. And it's just unfortunate because I think this all goes back to the decision to pay him, what you could have done, and what this team could look like. I'll tell you right now, Joe Flacco under center for the New York Football Giants might at least give you a more encouraging outlook on key positions that you want to evaluate. And that's the problem for Jones. He's not giving this team, this organization, a clear perspective on players that they want to get a deeper look at, as opposed to guys you're going to lock in place, like a Malik Neighbors, like an Andrew Thomas, guys you feel like the talent is already understood.
Yeah, well, and Adam, the way that Daniel Jones is playing now, we can say, oh, the interception was a Hail Mary against the Cowboys, so some of these stats are misleading, but whatever. Like, some of this, take it with a grain of salt. Daniel Jones is completing 63% of his passes. In his career, he's completed 64%. His yards per attempt are 6.1. It's lower than his career average of 6.6. His touchdown to interception ratio is close to what it is historically, just like 1.25 per. Like, he is playing exactly at the level that he has played the previous 5 seasons for the Giants, albeit there are injuries, there are ebbs and flows, there are ups and downs. So, like, what you are seeing from Daniel Jones right now is the expectation of how you think he can play, which is just good enough to like help keep the team competitive, not good enough to be the reason why I mentioned that they win, but can also be the reason why they lose. And the last thing I will touch upon, like you mentioned Joe Flacco, you mentioned Andy Dalton. You look at a guy, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is the move that the Giants should make, but you look at a guy like Ryan Tannehill, right? He has better overall career completion percentage than Daniel Jones. He has better yards per attempt, 7.3 instead of 6.6. So he actually stretches the ball more than Daniel Jones. He has almost a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. So, like, when you look at Ryan Tannehill's 10, 12-year career, and you look at Daniel Jones being in his 6th season, we know what these quarterbacks are at this point. I think at least I do. And there's an argument to be made that would this offense function better with Joe Flacco, with Andy Dalton, with Ryan Tannehill, not missing some of the key moments or key spots that the Giants need them to. Granted, they are not as athletic as Daniel Jones. They can't move out of the pocket. They can't make people miss out in space. But talking about running an offense, it is really hard when you see Daniel Jones missing these deep shots to not wonder if you placed another veteran that is a serviceable backup, 15-year journeyman into this roster. Could the offense run more efficiently, and would the Giants be putting up more than 15.5 points a game?
Yeah, and listen, you extrapolate out his stats right now. Beginning of the year, I said, we talked about what would be a good year for Daniel Jones? Where would you feel comfortable about the next 2 seasons? And I said, hey, you got to throw 22 to 24 touchdowns, got to see 3,400 passing yards, and the ratio needs to be right. He's going to be closer to 4,000 passing yards than 3,500 right now, as it currently stands, if he can stay healthy. But the 6 yards per pass attempt, that's not good enough, even though he's averaging 220 yards a game right now. And whether it's a Hail Mary attempt or not, you're right now sitting on a ratio where you're talking about 4 up, 3 down. And we'd be looking here saying, so you're averaging a touchdown a game. So at the end of the season, we're going to say what? 17 and 14, right? 17 and 30, even he cleans it up a little bit, gets a little better. 18 and 13. Like, it's just not, it's never going to be. And we knew it wasn't.
You got to get to 20. Can you get to 20 touchdowns? Like, that seems like, it seems like such a low benchmark. And
Andrew,
Vegas had it even lower than that. But, like, don't you feel like 20, like, just get me at least like a touchdown and a quarter a game, and maybe we're working with something here.
100%. So listen, again, none of this is to say that the New York Giants, or that we felt like Daniel Jones for the New York Football Giants was going to be X for them this year. But tragically, it actually, despite some stats telling you he's having a good season, the eye test is just reminding you where the deficiencies are, and the fact that you have the number 1 wide receiver and are still struggling to succeed has been a bit of a stain. That being the case, we're going to come back in, obviously, on our next episode and take a look at the quarter mark, where the team stands currently, where the next handful of games are going to be played, and whether or not we think, both on the field and in the stat sheet, we can see this team take a turn into a better direction.